I have known Bart for a very short period of time. Bart is a graduate of BYU. He's a graduate of University of Utah. He married extremely well, as many of us do. His father had a business that Bart took over and grew and turned into many businesses. And Bart is best defined as being a builder. I try to not use the term businessman. He builds businesses. He builds people. He builds friendships. He builds contacts. And he's very serious about it. You received a business card today from Bart to tell you who he is and gives you a way to contact him. I don't think he's given those out for any purpose other than to be seriously helpful. I would recommend everything he says to you today. I find that I learn something every single time I sit down with him, and sometimes that's for a long time. I once learned a very, very important lesson from someone who told me that they never make hires of people who agree with them. They always hire people who disagree with them because they already have their own opinion. Why do they need to hire somebody else who's like them? They want to hire somebody who's going to question them, who's going to challenge them. And every interaction I have had with Bart in the time that I have known him has been a challenge, and a challenge in a good way. And so I highly recommend everything Bart will tell you. Feel free to ask him questions at the end, but it's an honor, Bart, to have you with us.
My mic's back on here. Can you hear me? Okay, it's an honor to be with you today. This working?
It's on the side one. It's on the little ones on the side. For some reason, it's not on the big one.
Okay.
I'll keep one back here so you see what's.
That would be good. You know, what a great time to be going to the university, of any university, especially this one. There's so much going on in the world, and there's so many opportunities, and if you don't learn how to deal with the opportunities, you're going to get missed. So I've got a lot of material in the half hour I've got, so I'm going to, excuse me for skipping through. I can actually make this PowerPoint available. Is that one going to fit that? Okay. And we're going to try to have some fun. If you don't like the talk, we've got some popcorn for you. Pop Zero. It's one of my companies. My brother-in-law invented this. It's got Skinny Pop really nervous. They did a 2-for-1 when we got it in Costco. And it's in Associated Food Stores. And the more you eat, the healthier you get. Zero fat, saturated fat, or anything. So, but they won't let you eat it in here. So let's see if is this moving? I can't get it to move, but I'm clicking to the right. So carry him. See if he's. Let him know I can't click it. So there we go. We're going to have some little fun here, and I got a $100 bill. If someone can tell me who this is. Let's see if that'll move. Can you get that video to go? You got about 10 seconds. It's actually his name. He's my oldest and youngest grandson. He's in 15 years in California where he learned to surf. This is behind his boat in Utah. But he has some friends that were down here. Tanner Watts, he's going on a mission to El Salvador in 30 days. My youngest grandson. Okay, the $100 is still here. We're going to have a lot of questions. I can't get it. There we go. I wasn't pushing hard enough. Okay, so 23 years ago, I was a Ford dealer. Then Ford came and bought all the Wasatch Front Ford dealers out, and we bought a Freightliner dealership in '83. We found 100 acres in the middle of 400 acres of trucking companies. So we built 500,000 square feet of buildings out there, and I needed 15 mechanics fast. So I dealt with all the schools in the Wasatch Front, and we picked this one to partner with. And we hired 15 guys, gave them $2,000 of tools. We gave them a job half a day, and 3 of those guys are 3 of our best managers, making over $100,000 a year. These are some of the businesses I'm involved with. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but my wife, to her chagrin, I never want to retire. I don't know what I do. I'm not very good at golfing or fishing, but I like to do them. But okay, so who wants to answer this question? What's the shortest distance between 2 points? Okay, good job. So think about how many mistakes you could avoid if you knew what was exactly, absolutely true in your life, in any part of your life. You know, some of you are not married yet, and you got to make that decision. If you knew everything about this guy or gal you're dating, or the company you're thinking of working for, or the career you're going into, so we're going to talk a little about how important this is for you in a world today where, you know, I was a mission president in Dallas from 05 to 08, and one of the things I do now is help young people start businesses or help them with the ones they've got. And one of them McKay Coppins works for BuzzFeed, and he said when he spoke at the Hinckley Law Library last fall that 17 of the top 20 stories during the last month of the election were absolutely fake news. That becomes a real challenge for you today as you're trying to make decisions. See if you can play that little video here. See if you can get some analogies of what you're going to see here, if you can get that one going. There we go. There's lots of companies out there that sound great. They may sound like it's the thing to go, the place to go, but these guys decide to have a little fun with people that are easily tempted to steal. And I liken some of these bike riders, thieves, to employees that you know, I would say over half the companies I know of today are not in the financial condition they would like to be, or they're for sale. And as I've hired over 500 people in my career and interviewed 3 or 4 times as many, I've never had 3 questions asked to me. One is, what is the financial condition of your your company? What are your future plans with the company? And here you're spending all this time trying to think you got a career, but if you don't know the answer to those 2 questions at a critical time in your life when you think you're ready to rock it off, you can have a big disappointment. And the third thing is, what is it like working at your company? And, you know, I'd welcome anybody. In fact, I require employees that I hire to go talk to other employers. I want their opinion as well. I want to see if they fit the culture. And anyway, sorry for that guy was having too much fun, wasn't he? Oh, this one's pretty good. Okay. So, don't be bashful, and you guys are smart. I believe human nature is incredibly talented if given the challenge and if you just take it. But ask these questions. Find out from the other people that work here. You know, how do they treat the employees? Do you have to beg for pay raises, or do they just? I think it's the employer's responsibility for you to not have to negotiate with them. How does management communicate with employees? Do they communicate, or do you just kind of do your thing and no policy procedure? And do they offer training for personal improvement and for the company? These are huge to me. Hopefully they are to you. So here's a trivia question. This is worth $100. What is the real national debt? Now, when I say real, I mean on and off balance sheet. Who knows what off balance sheet debt is? Okay, on balance sheet debt is if I buy a car and I sign a 3-year contract, that goes on my balance sheet. The car's worth $30,000. I owe $25,000. My net is the $5,000 down. But if I rent a car, I don't have to put that on my balance sheet because it's a monthly or daily thing, okay? But an off-balance sheet to the government would be Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Well, I paid a lot of Social Security in my life, but do you think those should be obligations that the government should pay? Medicare, Medicaid? Because they don't know how long I'm going to live. I'll show you in a minute what it is. Anybody want to take a guess? I got $100 here. If you can get within 10 trillion, I will. No, you're off. I'm going to let one more person try that. So when we talk about a million, billion, a trillion like it's no big deal, well, think about it this way. If a million seconds is 12 days and a billion is 32 years, that's a lot of extra money, isn't it? So a trillion is 32,000 years. You know, and they're telling you from our Washington that our national debt is 19 trillion. Well, if you add sorry, I gave you the answer there. According to Stanford, when you add the off-balance sheet debt, there's another 127 trillion that we've got to pay for what people assume they're going to get in Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Is this a problem? Anybody think it's a problem? Raise your hand. Is it a problem for you? Okay. Luckily, I've been blessed, and whether I get Social Security or not, it's not going to affect whether I drive a white Ford truck. But for you and most people, it's a huge thing. And I asked Spencer Zwick, who was good friends with my son. He was Mitt Romney's financial campaign manager. Said, what percentage of the politicians, Democrat, Republican, congressmen, senators, understand this problem? And he said less than 25%. There's one Democratic senator that said this. He said, we don't want to scare the American public by talking about this. Well, this is the topic today. How to get a job that doesn't just pay an hourly wage or a salary to get by. My wife was watching CNN and they said that, you know, half of Americans couldn't put together more than $500 today. Half of them. You know, how does that work? It doesn't work. We're not going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, but someday I'm going to teach everybody I can what's in a barrel of crude oil. Because it gets hammered, and in my industry, did any of you know that jet fuel is basically straight kerosene? It's about 11% of what comes out of normally. Look at all those things that if we didn't have oil, and really less than 2% is subsidized, about 70% of our power comes from, and I have no problem with green, but here's a question for you. This is a $100 question. How much carbon comes out of a new exhaust pipe? We have 200 mechanics in our shop. We don't even put hoses on them. Anybody want to guess? For $100? Get within 5%. What? 17. Wrong. 12. Oh, you guys, I can't give money away. Less than 2 parts per million. That's cleaner than the air in Salt Lake City and the largest 50 cities. So when you see a Freightliner going down the road, it's an air cleaner. We don't even put hoses on them anymore. Here's a question for you. How many times these new Mavericks, we have another company, Utah Tank and Trailer, we sell tanks, aluminum tanks that haul fuel. How many times a month do you think these 9,500 gallon tanks that get in your way and have a 4,500 gallon trailer fill up a Maverick a month? If you can get within 5 times, another $100. Anybody want to guess?
25 times.
25.
15.
Twice a day. We would be out of fuel in Utah in one day if we didn't have these trucks coming in during the middle of the night and when, okay? Grocery stores, 2 days. Oh, wait, what was this one? Oh, here's another one. Okay, what's the number 1 selling car in Norway? Okay, why? There's 100% sales tax on anything that's not fully electric. Is that a problem? I'd love to talk about Tesla stock and Amazon stock, but don't have time today. Watch those, though. So I'm going to talk about what I call the truth pyramid. Doctrines are things that have always been true, always will be true, and you can just absolutely bank on them. Think of those. I spent a year when I got home from Texas coming up with a dozen, and I've got maybe 2 dozen that I can absolutely bank on. I would stake my life on it. Principles are things that come out of doctrines, but they're not always true. They're rules, policies, procedures. In our companies, we have rules or policies and procedures. Everybody has to agree on a procedure, and they can't vary from it unless there's some dire emergency, and they can change it if they can get a consensus. Otherwise, we have chaos. We used even commandments, like the ox is in the mire, you're probably not going to let him die. So style's how you do it. You know, when my son bought Freightliner of Utah, we have a very different style. He's out 80% of the time with the customers, golfing, fishing, going to Pebble Beach. I used to spend 80% of my time in. How does that company survive? Well, he's taken it from 300 or 400 million to $1 billion in sales last year. He sold over 10,000 new and used trucks. But he has the same pay plan, the same mentality we had before. So let's talk about what's a governing value. Back in 2002, this is my wife and her 2 daughters. We decided they talked me into going back to New York. We booked a flight in early October, not knowing the Twin Towers would go down. And when we got back there, we were the first flight they even allowed to go back in. And we got down to the financial district, and it was unbelievable. I never smelled a stench like that. I will never forget that smell. And looking at the other buildings that were half as tall as the Twin Towers, it looked like toothpicks were sticking out of the other buildings, the glass buildings. And what it was I-beams that were, when they snapped, they were impelled into these other buildings. So let's take a minute here and, what's your name? Would you come down here? Well, you can stay right there. What's your name?
Janie.
Janie. Do you have any younger brothers or sisters?
One.
One. What's their name?
Her name is Emma.
Emma. How old?
22.
22?
Yes.
You like her, Emma? Okay, good. This won't work if you don't. Let's suppose that we put a cable that's 2 inches thick, it's not going to break, between those 2 Twin Towers. And those buildings are always swaying a little bit. There's a little mist and humidity up there. And, but it's 200 yards between those 2 buildings. So I got a $100 bill here. Are you going to walk that wire or shimmy any way you want for $100?
Just for $100?
Yeah.
No,
How about 1,000?
probably not.
100,000?
I don't know.
How about 1 million?
Maybe.
Okay. Now let's say Emma is sitting on one building and you're on the other, and you know that there's a terrorist over there that's going to push her off if you don't get across that cable in the next 10 minutes. How much do I have to pay you?
Nothing.
Nothing, she said. Why?
Because I like her.
You love your sister.
Yeah.
And family's important, okay?
Yeah.
That's a governing value, okay? So what I challenge you to do is think about, write down what you believe is absolutely true, and out of those things, write down your governing values. I interview people and I say, what are your governing values? And most of them give me a deer in the headlights. I have them in every company I run. And in fact, we're building the first Sprinter greenfield dealership in the country. I was back meeting in Atlanta with the president of Daimler Vans last Thursday. And to get a franchise, you have to have a governing values statement, which we've had for 30 years. But every mechanic, every employee has to sign this because they want to know what you're going to live up to. And when employees break that, they're not there anymore. So again, as you go around horizontally, the next thing is making some plans. When you decide what you believe in, we just talked about that. And then the top is what you do. So if you look, doctrines are what explain to you, give you the motivation for why you do things. Principles, rules, procedures are what you do, and how you do it is style. So I've used this a lot in talking, trying to communicate with employees and other people. I don't think I have time, let's see, today to go through this, but have any of you heard Hiram Smith, one of the Franklin Covey guys, was the belief window? It's an amazing concept. He went around and talked to every high school to the druggies about what happens when the psychologists say there's 4 basic needs: to live, to love, to have variety, and feel important. And they look through these pains they have on their own belief window of what they have to do to get that. Some have to take drugs. Some have to do nasty things. But at the end of the day, he has this graph that the timeline until you get the results. For Elvis Presley, John Belushi, how did that work for them to take drugs? They were trying to get variety or be popular or whatever, but did that work well for them? Not at all. So how do you find out if something's really true? Well, one of the things that's been a great blessing in my life is to have mentors. And I want to talk about what a mentor really is. excuse me here. It's not just a friend or a grandfather it's someone. There's a book called Creating Wealth by this James who's third generation. This is an amazing book. But he talks about how mentors are people that don't just make you feel good and give you a blue, ribbon. They're able to get you to think, and they don't give you any answers to questions. And I'd really suggest that you never, ever expect a mentor or a family friend to give you an answer, because you've got your own agency, you've got the responsibility to make your own decisions. And people that do that, then thinking they can blame someone if it's not the right decision, are severely disappointed. So a great mentor will help you ask the deep questions of what you really think success is in your life. Ask that question to yourself. What does success look like to me? Is it money? Is it family? Is it time to fish? Is it, I don't know what, okay? I'm going to talk about Harry Pritchard. This guy was amazing. He was a friend of my dad, and I ended up hiring his son-in-law to be my controller when I bought the Ford dealership. He ran 20 groups. Let me see what's on here. We'll stay here for a minute. Anybody know what a 20 group is? So there's 4,400 Ford dealers in the country, and what we do is we hire someone that runs a 20 group, and then we send a financial statement in once a month, and they send us back a 50-page book that's electronic now with every expense, gross, to 0.1% what's going on. So we know where we sit compared to the average. Then we meet 3 times a year, and we exchange ideas. If I see someone's doing a great job running their body shop, I'll go eat dinner with them and ask them, or we'll go golfing in the afternoon, and it's the most valuable. I've been on 20 group trips for over 30 years, and it's just been amazing how having the metrics helped me understand what to do. So it was interesting when in 1990 I bought the Ford, Rick Warner Ford, and then in 96 Ford wanted to get down to 3,000 dealers, so they hired these young MBAs to come in and consolidate some of the dealerships. So they picked 5 markets. The Wasatch Front was one of them. They bought out all 9 dealers, and they paid whatever it took to get that done, and it wasn't cheap. Luckily, I needed the money to do this 500,000 square feet of buildings we were doing out in the truck center. And they needed a controller, so they hired my partner. Jerry's a miserable Polish Catholic guy, just amazing. He just retired. He's 8 years older than I am. But when he consolidated all the financial statements and looked at what all the other 8 dealers were doing, we all paid the same for parts, cars, and trucks, but we were making as much as the other 8 combined. And we gave $1 million to our employees that couldn't move with us out to the Freightliner dealership. And we say to ourselves, how did that happen? And I think it was the way he paid, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Basically, he took these metrics and he found out that 45% of the gross profit, not gross revenue, you need revenue to get gross, but more people go out of business generating revenue, not knowing what their variable and fixed costs are. But so if you're my parts manager or sales or service, you get 45% of the gross. You pay the variable, the ones you can control, the commissions, advertising, flooring, and you keep the rest. So a few years ago, there was 2 young guys that were going to Stanford, and their dads had a lot of money, and they said, if you can just get out of here, we'll buy any business you want. In fact, my son Buzz, when he graduated here, it was a 2-year college, and he graduated in the top 87% of his class. And you're not paying attention. But then he went to Westminster, and he was motivated by money, and I was on the mission. So he said, Dad, if I can get up to a 3.5, they give a little incentive off tuition. Can I have it? And I said, yeah, that's an easy bet. And he got it. It was like $7,500 a year for the last 2 years. But these 2 Stanford guys joined our 20 group. They immediately went out and bought 5 other locations from Fontana, San Diego, and Vegas. And they were big. But they were going crazy because they said, wait a minute, you're selling $3 million of parts a month, and we're selling $3 million with all 6 stores. How do you do that in Salt Lake? not only are you selling as much, but you're doing it with half the people. Well, I said, fly up here. They got in their jet, they flew up, and they counted our people. And they said, wow. And they said, really, is this everybody that does it? And the employee said, yeah, it is. So we went back in my office. I said, well, how do you do that? I said, well, we pay them 45% of the gross, and if they can do it with half or more, that doesn't matter to us. We'd rather have them. I'd put our retention of employees up against any company I know. So I said, well, what do they make? And so I pulled out the payroll stuff, and they looked back and said, I said, what's the matter? I said, well, we're not paying our people that much money. I said, why not? Because we don't need to. We can hire them for half that price. I said, well, fine. I left for 3 years, and it ran itself with record profit months because I had people that knew how to run the business, and they were taking care of it like it was their money, because it was. So anyway, I wish we could talk a lot more about pay plans, but we don't. Well, let's move to my topic, and hopefully what I've talked about, you'll see will tie in. I just completed a mission where at the LDS Employment Center in Sugar House, and I continued to work down at the professional networking group at Welfare Square. So I would spend, I don't know how many hundred people I worked with in the last year plus, but I learned some things, and what I would do is really try to just critique the resume, which there's 100 ideas on that, practice interviewing and networking. So you got a little handout today, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because you can read it later and decide if it's true or not, but I'm going to tell you a couple stories that may help you. So here's some things I learned. I can't really read that, but I'll tell you what I learned. I should be able to without reading it if I learned it right. Most people are not very good at interviewing, and most interviewers are even worse. Now, so what's the purpose of an interview? It's to get to know who this person is, right? 80% of my decision to hire is in, not the interview, that's 10%. 10% is on a personality profile we take, and 80% is on references. But when most people walk into an interview, they're sweaty palm, nervous, and I don't want to say anything wrong, and that's like pulling teeth. So when I'm hiring people, I just start going through resumes and say, well, boy, do they live out of the Wasatch Front? Do they live out in Utah County? You know, they don't want to fight that traffic. I'll just move them out for that alone. Take your address off. I think that's pretty common, your email and your cell phone. But put the position you want on there if there is a specific position. You know, it's a really tough day. That was a fire we had when we were building our first building. And I was taking the factory rep out. He finally saw we were underway, and here the welders were putting the skylights in, and they lit the carbon fiber insulation on fire. But luckily, it wasn't too bad.
Bart, do you want to take questions now or at the end? I just see a hand up. Do you want to take
Go
questions
ahead.
now?
That's fine.
I was just reading your last slide, and say like you were looking for a job in another state, like how would you go about that, would you say?
Well, same way. It's just as important or more so that you have references. And I will talk about that, and you'll be my first question when we get done if we don't, okay? But I can't tell you, we got a business owner right here. How tough is it, Tyler, when all of a sudden you lose a key employee?
I do everything I can to not.
Okay, but when you lose them, it's not a good day, is it?
No.
It's panic.
It is.
How do we fill that slot? And how do you fill it? I mean, you post the job on Indeed, you go on KSL, and you start the flow, but
Network.
you network. That's what you do. You hope there's someone out there that somebody knows that is capable and has the skills. And that's why I say, get on your game now. Don't start networking when you get out of here. I'm on the Davis Supply Technology Board, and I spoke up there to graduation last couple months ago, and I said, raise your hands, anybody that didn't have a job. There was not one person. They have 323 business partners. I said, how many of you had a job a year ago? Half of them raised their hands. Okay? Don't wait till this is a crisis. Start practicing interviews. Start practicing looking at your resume. You got my business card. I spend a day a week just meeting with people and doing this, okay? I'd be glad to meet with any of you. But let's see. So, this may sound stupid, but be the kind of person that someone will want to hire. Be the person that someone will give awesome references to. I mean, really, I don't expect that much, even when people go to technical school at Daimler or Freightliner or Sprinter or welding or even an MBA. What I want is someone that is a great problem solver, a great team builder, knows how to get results, and is committed to do the right thing. So an internship is another thing. I was talking to your president about this. This is the solution, I think. I mean, so many people are so focused on what's the benefits, what are you going to pay me, really? Or they ship out resumes and email masses, hundreds, thousands. I wonder why the phone never rings. It doesn't work that way, I don't think. You pick an industry, a career, a company or two, and you go after it. You go park in their doorstep. You go talk to their employees, find out who makes decisions. What's it like working here? Go offer to work for free. There's 6,000 baby boomers my age trying to figure out how to sell their business. Okay? And the dean of Ball State Business School wrote a book on entrepreneurship, and I read it a couple months ago, and I've been preaching this for years. My missionaries would go home and said, "You want to get on your own business? Banking is so tough you can't believe it. Accounting's even tougher. But find one of these guys that runs a dry cleaner or a pet supply or whatever you want to do, or a professional thing, and go in there and tell him that you want to make his life easier. You'll sweep the floors, you'll take out the trash, you'll do whatever is necessary." Jeff Brownlow is a 32-year-old guy that I partner with. It's an amazing individual. He's got 5 boys, and he's 32. He's been to Stanford, MBA, went to ASU, BYU. He grew up in a trailer house in Prescott. His dad was a sod layer. And he ended up going on an internship with the Federal Reserve. He helped write the TARP laws. He would meet with President Obama every day at 4 o'clock to give him the daily download of the world economic situation. And if you think that was easy, you need to talk to him. But I partner with him in a few businesses with 3 of his other Stanford buddies. And last summer, we had 16 MBA interns from Stanford and BYU. But the challenge was, the first thing he had them do was go and cut. He's got this incredible backyard in Mill Creek. It's like a football field. And he gets the interns out there and says, "You know, my boys are too little to cut the grass. I don't want them cutting their fingers off. Will you cut the lawn?" And he sees some don't want to do it, some get out there, and he ends up hiring about half of these 16 MBAs. But if they don't cut the lawn, he doesn't consider them. We had one that graduated from Stanford that worked at Utah Tank. He was just dying to get away from a pivot table and a spreadsheet and get his hands greasy. So I hired one guy who, he's just the kind of guy that, I mean, I said, to work, you got to get a commercial driver's license, you got to take the heavy truck marketing course, you got to spend all the time in the shop and the parts. And I didn't have time to train him on everything, but he just, when I'm not there, he's out there straightening parts up or cleaning the shop or whatever. His name is James Logan. He will run and own Utah Tank and Trailer someday, sooner than later. Just because he's willing to do what the company needs, not what, some interns, they drive me crazy. I've got another one coming from Croatia next week. This guy was up at Utah State. And he is amazing. He is so humble. He appreciates everything. And he'll do anything. And he convinced me we would. But think about it. Where are you going to get a better job who could be your financer, your mentor, put 10% down and let him have an installment contract on the business? Something to think about. We just talked about that. One of my favorite questions is, do you like to read? And I was hiring a parts manager 2 weeks ago, and I asked this question to a guy that looked really qualified. His resume was perfect, great experience. He said, "I love to read." "Really, what do you like to read?" "Oh man, hunting magazines." "Really? What else?" "Fishing magazines." "What else?" "Well, motorcycles." My wife thinks I'm crazy. I've got a library in my basement that just is on wall-to-wall, ceiling-to-floor, business books and religion books. I don't like reading novels. Every new book that comes out, I'm reading it or listening to it. But if you want to continue progressing, That's the key. I'm going to watch my time here. 10 more minutes before.
We're done at 20 after, so how much time you want for Q&A?
Okay. I've been in sales and put on sales meetings for the top sales forces at Freightliner and Ford for 30 years, and this is what we do when we sell anything. And you're selling yourself to an employer. So think about it. I'm going to get their attention. How? With a great resume, with a great networking pool. We could talk about that for an hour. Evidence is the most important. When I'm selling a Sprinter, it costs $10,000 more than a Ford, Nissan, or Dodge. I've been a Ford dealer. Econoline vans, the new Transit, it'll go 200,000 miles if you pray about it a lot. We have 60 Sprinters with Salt Lake Express that have been, with one in-frame overhaul, they go 1,000,000 miles. They get 18 to 24 miles a gallon. And we can show you where if you're going 20,000 miles or more a month, it'll save you so much money you can't stand it, and it feels like you're driving a sports car. But I provide evidence so it's easy for the individual to make the decision. No one wants to be sold, but do you do the hard work as a salesperson? You're the person, if you can make it easy for them. How do you do that? You minimize the risk. You do it with references. Everybody has their agency, and if you respect it, there's 8 great closes they studied in sales, and one's used more than all the rest combined. Anybody have kids here? Is it tough to get them to go to bed? No, you got to figure it out. How do you do it?
We just have a routine. Every night we do stories, and they're excited for that. And then we just do scriptures and prayers together. And
Perfect.
they go to bed.
Man, I wish I had your talent. But for those who aren't as thoughtful and have figured it out like him, anybody argue about going to bed? Well, here's the deal. Everybody that has a body knows they have the right, their spirit fought for the right to choose. And if you say to them, it's time to go to bed, you can either go to bed or clean the toilet, everybody wins. There's nothing that can go wrong there, okay? It's the same in dealing with people. As soon as you use the power and try to force, you lose. They just want to get away from you. It's just a matter of how long it'll take to do that. Chuck Coonrat lives in Park City. He deals with big Fortune 500 companies all over the world, and this is an awesome book. He came up with the greatest management principle in the world: things that get rewarded get done. We're going to talk about Professor Wasden's pay plan right now, okay? Should we do that? Where did he go? Okay. He's an awesome guy. He was the top energy analyst in the world for JP Morgan. He uncovered the Enron scandal. And he manages a lot of money for me. I hate the stock market. But last year he made about $1.5 million on one portfolio and $2.5 million on another one. So, or more. If you get his class, he's got a contract working with a big financial organization to teach people how to manage money, because most people don't have a clue. But most money managers charge 1 or 2% of the money you've got outstanding, depending how much. Would you rather should we pay him 1%, or do you think he'd perform better if we gave him 10% of the profit he makes over the money I give him? Who says 10%? Okay, it's hard to find a money manager that will do that, right, Gary? But guess what? I'm not his customer unless he does that. Last year he got me 15%, so instead of getting 10% or 1, what it would have been, he did better. Okay? So don't be afraid. I don't know how people making hourly wages are going to make it if the trillions of dollars of debt are real. And I'd challenge you to Google that and understand what off-balance sheet unfunded liabilities are. Everybody that I work for, every company I'm working with, we're trying to get everybody converted to getting a percentage of what they generate in gross profit. And it sounds scary, but once people are on it, I challenge you to come talk to employees working for us. Once they're on it, they would never go back, because they know how they're doing all the time. They don't get laid off for some surprise because all of a sudden someone said, well, you're not worth the salary we're giving you anymore. But our expenses are always under control. I'm going to have to really move here. Let's see. But the quick way to the top is references. I want to tell you a couple. I'll tell you one story. I wish I could tell you a lot, but I found a controller that was stealing from us at one of our companies. So I was at the employment center and asked the receptionist there, you know, who's the best accounting applicant sitting out there? Oh, Carrie Morgan. Really, have him come see me. We had a half-hour interview. I said, bring me 5 references. I took the references, walked in the general manager's office with my brother who's the accountant, and said, let's just start calling these guys. So we're calling about Carrie Morgan. We're in Salt Lake. We're considering hiring him as a controller. What would you think about him? Oh, he's in Salt Lake? Oh, why? I wish he was in the Bay Area. I know 5 people would hire him. I'd hire him back myself. Why? Oh, he's the first one to show up in the morning. He gets along with everybody. He's smart. He knows accounting. He just went on and on. I mean, we called another, exactly the same thing. We picked up the phone. We said, get in here, take a drug test. He was hired by the end of the day. Is that the way to hire people? I mean, yeah, when you go to most employment places, they'll even train you to not use references. I worked with a guy that was 46 years old. He had a 4-page resume. He'd been to 3 different universities on engineering. And I said, this is killing me. Did any of your professors like you? He said, oh, sure. Well, find one that likes you. And where you said UVU engineering, get a half line that says something about you. So he came back with a resume. Said University of Utah Engineering. And then in quotes, it said, one of the top 5% students I've ever had, Henry D. Eyring. Okay? Instead of putting a third person word, who talks in third person besides Carl Malone? I used to sell him trucks. Okay? Outstanding, incredible, smartest, brilliant, richest. Are you kidding me? Everybody, because of the other agency, they say who. If I say black, you think white, up, down, cold, hot. That's what's happening in the interview. It's a chess game. But if you can say, Kerry Wasden says, Bart Warner will pay me if I sign a contract, okay? Then it isn't me, it's a second person. Or if I say I'm first person, I'm honest and really neat and whatever, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, you go, really? You're thinking subconsciously. Says who? Make your references awesome. I wish I could tell you, I don't think I've ever hired anybody without a reference. We've talked about that a little bit. We're going to talk about don't be afraid to do hard things. We're going to skip that one. These are the governing values in every company I work with. You know, Harvard has done the 75-year study of what brings satisfaction. Did anybody read this? For 75 years, they've studied octarians and interviewed them. Deep, meaningful relationships. I mean, in today's world with texting and everything else, figure out how to do it a little different. You know, your life will be different if right now you think about what your governing values are. I used to hate going to funerals. I'm going to a lot of them now at my age. But it gives me a chance to think, what do I want to have done in my life when it's all said and done? And let's see. It's not working. You can help me click. Okay. You know, when we sold the Ford dealership, my wife was really heavy into PTA, so she started this Youth Enrichment Foundation trying to... Carrie's been to one of these concerts. There's 1,000 kids that get piano lessons a week at Whittier Elementary that speaks 22 different languages there, kids living out of cars. There's Glendale Junior High, mostly Polynesian and Hispanic. These guys, I didn't know junior highs had football teams that traveled around the West, but they do. And these guys will miss a football game before they'll do this. East High, you should see the football team that sits up in the left corner of this. You were there, right? I mean, it's the coolest thing in the world to be playing pianos. There's a lot of things you can do, but in your life, you can start right now just saying, I'm going to budget an hour a month, a week, to do something for someone else to give back, and you won't have to look back. We're so grateful. It was a little stretch for us. We have half a dozen masters in music, performance, piano teaching now, but we're glad we did that. Utah, who knows who Jesse Knight was? Most people don't. This is my all-time business hero. If you send me your email, I'll send you a book that's out of print now on him. He was amazing. He was one of the original pioneers when he was 4 years old. He got discouraged and disillusioned with some businessmen that he saw, and he went down to Payson with his wife, and he ended up hitting this huge mine. He pulled out $10 million of the humbug mine in 2 years. And he ended up spend his life helping fund BYU. He started 80 companies, and he built a ore transfer station up by the IMC in 53rd South, right in the center of the valley. This thing's been vacant and a mess for 50 years, or closer to 100. But me and this Jeff Brownlow, we've been working with Murray City, and we've spent almost $1 million cleaning it up. And in a year from now, we have this thing. We have commitments for more people than we can fit in there, of almost 100,000 square feet. We found this basement just a week ago that's 28 feet down. We're going to put glass floors on it, but it's going to be an entrepreneur center that will hopefully help people like you get, brainstorm jobs and have some cool businesses in there. I'm out of time, and I didn't leave me time for questions, but email me. We can talk. Is there time for one question? I don't know if I answered your question in the blue shirt.
Did you want to ask him a question? Did he cover it, or do you want to ask him later?
That's okay.
He has a good question for you. Let's finish with this.
I just noticed on your business card that your job title was EIEIO. So I was just wondering a little bit of the backstory behind that.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I got back from Dallas, my sons had taken all the cool ones like CEO, CIO, COO. So I figured I'd get that when it was a little bigger. And it fits because I have a 2,000-acre farm now, and I clean up after their messes. Thank you very much.
Can we
It's wherever you want it to be.
thank him for coming, please? On your way out, grab a bag of popcorn. Make sure Haley knows that you were here. Hand her your paper with your attendance. And if you're meeting us for lunch, please meet Haley at the back.